The most frightening thing about human nature is not that people can be cruel. It is that they can be kind for the wrong reason. They can smile at you and still be measuring your value. They can comfort you and still be thinking about what they can take from you. They can call you a friend while quietly waiting for the moment you become useful, weak, lonely, or easy to replace. And the worst part is this: you do it too. Not always, not openly. But somewhere inside there is a hidden machinery that never stops working. It compares, it judges, it envies, it calculates. It wants love, but it also wants power. It wants truth, but it also wants comfort. It wants to be seen, but only in the version that is easy to admire. Machiavelli understood this long before modern psychology gave it a nicer vocabulary. He knew that people do not move only by virtue. They move by fear, ambition, self-interest, image, and survival. He knew that appearances often matter more than reality because most people are not asking, "What is true?" They are asking, "What protects me?" That is why so much of life feels theatrical. The job interview, the first date, the family dinner, the social media post, the business meeting, even your own thoughts. You're not just living, you are performing. And the performance becomes so normal that one day you can no longer tell where the mask ends and the face begins. You say you want honesty, but when someone gives it to you, it hurts. You say you want depth, but when life gets heavy, you escape into noise. You say you want to be chosen for who you are, but you still edit yourself to be easier to love. This is the contradiction at the center of human existence. We beg to be known, and at the same time, we spend most of our lives making sure we are never fully seen. Nietzsche would have laughed at how seriously we take our moral costumes. He saw that many of our values are not born from strength, but from fear. Not from freedom, but from resentment. Not from truth, but from a desperate need to make pain feel meaningful. He would look at the modern person and see someone exhausted by comparison, addicted to validation, terrified of insignificance, and secretly ruled by the opinions of people they do not even respect. Think about that. How much of your life is actually yours? How much of your identity was built from your own soul? And how much was assembled from pressure, approval, fear, childhood wounds, and the silent hunger to matter? You may think you made yourself, but often you were shaped by praise, by humiliation, by rejection, by the first time someone made you feel invisible, by the first time someone made you feel powerful, and after that, every choice began carrying hidden motives. When you worked harder, was it because you loved the work or because you wanted to prove something? When you stayed silent, was it because you were wise or because you were afraid of being judged? When you helped someone, was it pure compassion or was there a quiet need to be seen as a good person? This is the part people avoid because it dissolves the fantasy of purity. And without that fantasy, the self feels unstable. Schopenhauer would tell you that beneath all our noble language is a blind force driving us forward, a will that is never satisfied. It wants more, then more again, and when it gets what it wanted, it immediately creates a new lack. That is why achievement does not end emptiness. It often reveals it. You thought success would silence the inner noise. It did not. It made the room bigger so the silence could echo harder. You thought admiration would heal the wound. It did not. It only made you more dependent on the next applause. You thought being desired would finally make you feel real. It did not. Because desire from others is temporary. It fades, it changes, it becomes ordinary. And then you are left alone again with the same unfinished self. This is where many people begin to break. Not in failure, in success, because failure can still feel honest. But success exposes the deeper problem. You got what you wanted, and you still feel empty. You crossed the line, and nothing sacred happened. You became the version of yourself you once prayed for, and there you are, staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m., still asking the same invisible question. Is this all there is? That question is dangerous, because once it enters the mind, the old life starts to crack. You begin noticing how often people are driven by envy, even when they call it ambition. How often morality is used as a mask for insecurity. How often love is tangled with ownership. How often forgiveness is offered, not because the wound is healed, but because the person is too afraid to lose the relationship. And how often you yourself are guilty of the same thing. Not because you are evil, because you are human. That is the sentence many people cannot bear. They want to believe that they are special, exceptional, clean, that their pain makes them deeper, their intentions make them better, their story makes them different from the rest. But deep down, you know the truth. You have been jealous of people you love. You have wanted to win arguments more than you wanted to understand. You have kept score. You have imagined revenge. You have smiled when you should have been honest. You have said, "I'm fine," when you were falling apart. You have wanted to be loved without being fully known, because being fully known feels like standing naked in a room full of judges. And maybe that is the oldest terror of all. Not pain, exposure. Carl Jung suggested that the most dangerous thing in a person is not only the darkness they know, but the darkness they refuse to see. The shadow does not disappear when ignored. It grows stronger in silence. The parts of you that you deny do not die. They wait. They gather force. They surface in envy, in cruelty, in manipulation, in addiction, in self-sabotage, in the sudden urge to destroy what you said you wanted. And that is why so many lives repeat the same pattern, the same toxic relationship, the same self-betrayal, the same hunger for validation, the same collapse after every high, because people do not always seek happiness. They seek familiar pain. They return to what they know, even if what they know is suffering. And the terrifying thing is that the mind can make suffering feel noble, necessary, deep, even romantic. So let me ask you something uncomfortable. What if the version of yourself you call real is only the version that learned how to survive? What if your personality is not a fixed identity, but a carefully constructed defense against rejection, insignificance, and helplessness? What if the thing you are calling purpose is actually just a sophisticated way of running from emptiness? Because once you see that, everything changes. Your friendships, your love, your work, your ambitions, your need to be admired, your need to be chosen, your need to be right. It all starts to look less like destiny and more like hunger. And hunger can wear beautiful clothes. But there is something even darker waiting beneath all of this. Something people rarely admit, even to themselves. Because once you understand human nature, you also understand that the same force that makes people love can make them betray. And the same mind that searches for meaning can also become addicted to destruction. And the question is not whether that force exists. The question is how far it goes inside you. Because in the end, the real nightmare is not discovering that other people have a dark side. It is discovering how familiar it already feels. If this video made you realize something uncomfortable about modern life or about yourself, don't forget to subscribe our channel. There is a moment in every human life that changes everything. Not the moment you fall in love, not the moment you succeed, not the moment you lose something. The real moment is when you suddenly realize that people are not who they pretend to be, and neither are you. It usually happens quietly. Maybe during an argument, when someone who claimed to love you suddenly uses your deepest insecurity against you with surgical precision. Maybe at work, when you discover that loyalty disappears, the second ambition enters the room. Maybe while scrolling through social media at night, watching people perform happiness with dead eyes and perfect lighting. Or maybe it happens alone. At 3 a.m., when you finally admit to yourself that some of your kindest actions were never truly selfless. That realization changes the atmosphere of reality itself. Because once the illusion breaks, you begin seeing human behavior differently. You stop listening only to words. You start watching motives, the subtle competition between friends, the fake humility, the hidden resentment behind compliments, the quiet satisfaction people feel when someone more successful finally fails. And suddenly, the world feels colder than it did before. Machiavelli understood this darkness better than most people ever will. He knew that human beings rarely choose morality when morality threatens their self-interest. People speak about principles until survival, status, desire, or fear enters the equation. Then the mask shifts. That is why history keeps repeating itself. Civilizations change, technology evolves, but human nature barely moves. People still crave power, still fear rejection, still manipulate, still envy, still destroy what they cannot control. And the strangest part is that most people do these things while believing they are good, because the human mind is built to protect its own image. A person can betray someone and still sleep peacefully if they create the right story in their head. She deserved it. I had no choice. They would have done the same to me. This is why evil rarely feels evil from the inside. It feels justified, necessary, reasonable. That is what makes it dangerous. Nietzsche once wrote that when you gaze long into the abyss also gazes into you. Most people think this means darkness corrupts you, but maybe it means something worse. Maybe it means that when you look deeply enough into human nature, you recognize yourself there. Not just your kindness, your potential for cruelty, your hunger for superiority, your hidden desire to dominate. Your jealousy, your vanity, your capacity to become cold when pain accumulates long enough. And suddenly, morality no longer feels simple, because life slowly teaches people terrifying lessons. The honest employee watches manipulation get rewarded. The loyal partner gets betrayed. The empathetic person gets used. The quiet person gets ignored. And over time, something begins changing inside them. Well, not immediately. Slowly, like poison entering water, they become harder, more strategic, less trusting, less innocent, and sometimes they hate themselves for it. But another part of them whispers something dangerous. This is how the world works. That whisper changes people. Because once survival becomes more important than truth, the personality starts splitting in two. There is the public self and the hidden self. The public self smiles, adapts, behaves correctly, says the acceptable things. The hidden self watches silently, calculating, resenting, competing, wanting more. Carl Jung believed that every person carries a shadow. Not just anger or aggression, but every desire and instinct society taught them to suppress. The more someone pretends to be purely good, the darker their shadow often becomes. And you can see this everywhere. The person obsessed with appearing moral often hides enormous rage. The person preaching peace may secretly crave control. The person desperate to appear confident may be collapsing internally every night. Human beings are contradictory creatures. They want freedom, but they fear uncertainty. They want truth, but only when it feels comfortable. They want individuality while desperately copying each other. And nowhere is this contradiction more visible than in the digital world. Social media did not create narcissism. It revealed it. For the first time in history, millions of people began broadcasting carefully edited versions of themselves every single day. Not because they were evil, but because the human mind is addicted to significance, to attention, to validation, to proof that it exists. Every post silently asks the same question: do I matter? And the terrifying thing is how temporary the answer feels. A few likes, a few comments, a short rush of dopamine, then emptiness again. So people post more, show more, perform more, until eventually they no longer know who they are without an audience. And maybe that is the real tragedy of modern life. Not that people are fake, but that they are slowly becoming incapable of being alone with themselves. Silence has become unbearable. Stillness feels threatening. The moment there is no distraction, the deeper questions begin surfacing. Who am I when nobody is watching? Why do I constantly compare myself to others? Why do I need recognition to feel real? Why do I feel lonely even around people who love me? Most people never stay with those questions long enough, because beneath them is something heavier, a fear that their entire identity might be fragile, constructed, artificial, and this fear controls more human behavior than anyone admits. Think about how often people sacrifice authenticity to avoid rejection. They laugh at jokes they do not find funny. Stay in relationships that drain them, hide opinions, suppress emotions, pretend to be confident, pretend to be happy, pretend not to care. Entire lives built around performance, and after years of pretending, the performance becomes permanent. This is why so many people feel emotionally numb. They are disconnected from themselves. They became actors in their own existence. Schopenhauer believed human life swings endlessly between desire and boredom. You suffer while chasing what you want, then suffer again once you get it. Look carefully at modern society, and you can see this cycle everywhere. People dream about money, then destroy their health to earn it. They dream about fame, then become prisoners of public opinion. They dream about love, then slowly suffocate under familiarity, resentment, and unmet expectations. Human beings constantly imagine that the next achievement will finally complete them. The next relationship, the next promotion, the next version of themselves. But the feeling never lasts. Because the problem is deeper than circumstance. It is built into consciousness itself. A mind that can imagine perfection will always suffer inside reality. And maybe that is why people become addicted to distractions. Because distractions protect them from confronting the emptiness underneath ambition. But sometimes reality breaks through anyway. In the middle of success, in the middle of intimacy, in the middle of ordinary life. A strange feeling appears. A feeling that something is missing even when everything seems fine. And no one talks honestly about how terrifying that feeling is, because it makes people question everything: their career, their relationships, their goals, their identity, even their morality, especially their morality. Because once you understand how much of human behavior is driven by fear, ego, insecurity, biology, trauma, and social conditioning, it becomes difficult to know where the real self even begins. Are people truly compassionate? Or do they simply fear guilt? Are people loyal or merely afraid of abandonment? Is love unconditional, or is it often an emotional transaction disguised as romance? These questions disturb people because they attack the foundation of how humans see themselves. And yet, deep down, almost everyone senses the truth. That civilization is thinner than it looks. That beneath manners and rules and social norms, there is still something primitive inside every person. Something ancient, something emotional, something dangerous. A force that wants power, control, pleasure, recognition, revenge. And the scariest part is not that this force exists. It is how easily it awakens. One betrayal, one humiliation, one traumatic moment, one taste of power. Sometimes that is all it takes for a human being to become someone unrecognizable, which raises a terrifying possibility. Maybe the line between a good person and a dangerous person is not as solid as people want to believe. Maybe under the right pressure, almost anyone can change. And if that is true, then what exactly is hiding underneath your own mask?